Welcome, everyone. I'm excited to be here because this is a new era of the podcast. Up until this point, I have only done solo episodes. So it's just been me sitting here talking about things that I think you'd connect with or that have connected with me that I think will be relevant to you. And today we're doing a whole new series on women living in grounded wildness. So this is going to be the stories of real women out there who have challenged the rules, who are in the process of unraveling some of the rules they have been handed and are reconnecting to themselves, to their freedom, the challenges that go along with that, and the wonderful things that go along with that. And so I thought about who I would want to have as my first guest, my first person ever interviewing on the podcast. Dara Beevas immediately came to mind, and it's perfect timing because she is my publisher for Grounded Wildness, and she is also an awesome, amazing woman living in grounded wildness. There have been so many times during this publishing process that Dara has reminded me to listen to myself and to my own grounded wildness and to remember that, yeah, there's a lot of shoulds and supposed tos out there, and come back into what feels right to you. So because of that, she felt like the absolute perfect person to have on here. And she has amazing experiences and stories that I know you're going to connect with on a very personal level as well. So I'm going to do Dara's official bio and then hand it over to her to introduce herself in a more personal way. So Dara's official bio, here it is. Dara Beevas is the co-founder of Wise Inc. Creative Publishing. She works with authors on a mission to publish books that are that ignite change, tolerance, and growth. She's worked with more than 400 authors to publish their books, including both of mine, both Grounded Wildness and An Overachiever's Guide to Breaking the Rules. She is also an author herself. She has published The Ultimate Guide to Book Marketing, The Indie Author Revolution, Social Media Secrets for Authors, and Amina of Zaria, a children's book that inspires little queens everywhere, especially Black and brown girls, to fight for what they believe in. I also gave it to my niece and she loved it. She is also won a bunch of awards and been a Bush Fellow herself. And despite this long list of awesome, amazing accomplishments, she's also a real person. I would describe Dara as passionate and grounded and a change maker and someone who is absolutely full of a whole lot of joy. So welcome, Dara. I am so thrilled to have you on the podcast. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm a little bit like blushing over here from that bio, but thank you for reading it. And thank you for having me. I'm so excited about this conversation.
Yeah, good. Thank you. I'm thrilled that you are the first guest. So you just heard your official bio back to you. And actually it could have been even more bulleted points with all the awards and boards that you've been on. But I want to hear you in your own words. Do you want to introduce that real person that I talked about? Who are you? Who is Dara Beevas?
I mean, that's that when you sent me that this morning, I was like, holy moly, what am I going to say? The first word that came to mind, which I'm surprised by, but we're grounding ourselves in our wildness. I mean, who I really am is just Dara, and when I think about who I am, I mean, I've always been anchored and grounded in my love of words and story. And that's what's just so fascinating. I just what I've loved most about my life is that I've gotten to meet amazing people and gotten to understand more about the world through listening to them tell their stories. And that's just not even through the job I get to have. That's just even with, I was sitting with my amazing body worker. I have chronic pain. And I was sitting with him and I've been seeing him now for about 3 months. No, not 3 months, like almost 2 years. Sorry. 2 years. Sorry,
Two different things.
And he started to tell me all about his life. And I was so mad when his next appointment came in because I was like, but wait, you moved from California to Phoenix and what? I mean, I just have always gravitated to people and wanting to understand what their lives have been like and wanting to be a fly on the wall of their experiences. And I'm not exactly sure why that's been, but that is just who I am. And it isn't because I'm just so nosy. I just think humans are just fascinating. And I wish that we knew more about how fascinating we are. I wish that more people knew how fascinating and how united we all are as humans through our stories.
I love that so much. And yeah, I mean, everyone has a story to tell, and how different would the world be if we understood our own stories and listened to other people's stories. It'd
Yeah.
be
And
such a
we
different.
start, you mean, you probably, I mean, just even in reading your book, and you tell a little bit more about what it was like to be Heather as a child and as a younger person. I mean, the most amazing gift we give to our young people is listening to them. I mean, everybody wants to be seen and heard. And it starts the literal second we enter the world. We want to be seen and heard.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think I love that you brought up the little people in the world, because we all start as those little people before the rules come on us, right?
Yeah.
Yes. And we start out as that unique individual, just authentic and full, and everything that we are. And it doesn't disappear, but it does get clouded over, is the way that I feel like it. And so it tells us to kind of shrink, or to just be a little bit, to hold ourselves back in certain ways. And so I'm really curious, when you think back to your childhood, or just growing up, or early work experiences, pretty much everything that came before this moment right now, what rules were you handed that you have had to unravel? So that could be in school, or family, or work, or religion, or culture, our entire society as a whole. Like, what rules have you been handed that you have started to, or have unraveled?
That's such a good question. I mean, I'm 43 now, and I would hear, elder women and big sister, like people in my life 10 years ago say, oh, wait till you get to your 40s. All of this that you're grappling with or struggling with. I mean, you start to really unpack it, Dara, when you get to 40. So just, hang on when you get to 40. And that was such wisdom, because I think in my 40s, I've spent the most of my free time unlearning the rules and deconstructing the rules. And on the one hand, I want to say that I had really amazing parents. I've got a dad and a stepdad and a mom who were really good about letting me be me, because I was a very awkward child, incredibly awkward, really, really strange. And they let me roll with it, and I didn't quite fit into the boxes of people around me. I was not popular. I was not, I resonated a lot when I read Maya Angelou's I Know Why the Cage Bird Sings, when she talks about how she looked different and felt different. I was like, I feel different. I look different. I have these big glasses. I got buck teeth. I had a big overbite because I was a thumb sucker, and I just wanted to be in a corner reading a book. And some of the rules I remember feeling oppressive just around God. God was like a non-negotiable. You must believe. We must go to church. We must pray this way in this kind of community to this kind of God who looks like this. It sounds like this. He, him pronouns always. That was big. And I also, growing up in the South, felt like a lady had to be a certain thing. And it wasn't like, Dara, you have to be that. But it was just always like, well, ladies do this, ladies do that, ladies don't do this, ladies don't. So whatever lady looked like in my own mind, I felt like I needed to adjust or conform to what a lady was. So that was one thing. And then lastly, I just felt like all the stories as an 80s, 90s kid, all of the girl stories centered a boy. And
Mm.
that was huge. I felt like I had to get married. I felt like I had to have kids. I felt like I had to, in some way, be preparing myself for my husband. And I totally grew up in that 80s, 90s purity culture, coming out of that Christian evangelical movement that was really big when we were teenagers.
Mm-hmm.
Had a purity ceremony, married Jesus, the whole 9 yards.
Wow. I did not know any of this. So this is so interesting. And I thank you for sharing all of that. And so many things are coming up in my mind. So one, I just want to point on then we'll get into the religious piece, which I think is so big for so many of us. Um, I love what you said around like the lady part. Like no one told you directly, Dara, you have to do this to be a lady, but it was just this general messaging of like a lady does this or a lady does that. I'm from Minnesota. I did not specifically have the lady part of like a lady does this. However, I think oftentimes this is how those rules get disseminated. Sometimes it is a very direct, like, this is the way you need to show
Yep.
up, or this is acceptable and this is not acceptable. But my experience has been the more indirect of like, these are the general messages about what a woman's supposed to be like, what a good student, a good girl, more for me, like what it means to be good, which is definitely, I'm sure, wrapped up in lady. So probably the same thing. But yeah, it often doesn't have to be the super direct. It can also be these indirect decipher or disseminating of rules and messages that we then feel like we need to conform to in order to live up to that. So yeah, I just wanted to
Create these rules
Mhm.
from just all the messages. I mean, I think there should be, or is probably already, some class somewhere on some campus just dissecting the media and movies we watched in the 90s, because there were so many messages to teens. Like I remember all the teen movies and watching all of them over and over and over and over, and feeling like I had to dress a certain way, my hair had to look a certain way, I needed to talk a certain way. And I'm sure that's no different, but for some reason I'm thinking about that 90s culture era where the girls did have that sexiness to them. I'm thinking of like Christina Applegate, and I'm thinking about Saved by the Bell with Kelly and Zach.
Yes.
Like I just felt like I needed to be cute, and I needed to be popular, and I needed to be fun, and I needed to be attractive to boys. And I was none of those things.
Yeah. Yeah. And I wasn't either. I mean, especially the like, I mean, that's a crux of my story too, is feeling like, because I was in a larger body at that time, which was like a huge no with the rules, right? It was like, no, you're not allowed, like larger bodies are not attractive. They're not desirable. You need to lose weight in order to be desirable to boys and then later to men. And
Yep.
yeah, like that was huge. And yes, the cuteness. And also I felt like in the mid 90s, there was like cute, but with an edge because of the grunge. It was like cute, but with an edge. Like Contempo Casuals was definitely the place that I loved to go shopping. And I had these crazy, like these ridiculous lace up heels that like I don't even own a pair. I think I own one pair of heels now. Like I cannot walk in them. What was I thinking? And I remember my tennis coach, I was walking down the hallway in high school and I literally could not walk appropriately in these shoes. And she kind of made fun of me. And I was like, oh yeah, this is kind of ridiculous. Like what I'm doing right now.
You did that moment of just kind of trying it on.
Yes.
Another woman is like, baby, no, take
Yes,
those off. No, baby.
exactly. She was like, you do not need to be doing this. You do not need to be doing this. So I think, yeah. So thank you for bringing up that whole lady good and just how, yeah, we get all those messages and romantic comedies and all the things that we listen to. And then there's the part when you brought up around God and church and like, this is the way we have to worship. And this is the God we pray to. And this is what this God looks like and says and does and all of that. I'm curious, how is that, how did that impact you? How does it continue to impact you as you've dug into that and unraveled it?
So, I would say I've had a couple friends, very, very few, but a couple really good friends kind of be on this journey before I got on this journey, which was helpful because I think it was brewing for a while where I thought to myself, grew up single parent, but very involved dads. And my mom found so much sanctuary in church because it was a community and she had 3 children, and there were lots of good things that came out for all of us growing up in church. I mean, I feel like having that centered way of grounding in prayer has served me my whole life. I think having a moral compass in my childhood and teenage years and young adult years, super great. And I really made great friends, and it really helped me to begin a process of like deep reflective thinking and thought around what do I want to do in the world? What is my purpose? What does God want for me? Um, the nuance that I've found myself at now, because it's been like a super long journey and I don't want to like go on and on and on and on and on about it. But what I will say is where I am now, it's not too far away, because I don't think we should throw away all of the ways in which we are programmed as children or young people. I don't think it's all bad. I don't think it's all good. I think as you grow and evolve, you need to customize it, and you need to really look at who you are and have what you learned align with who you are. So some people, they grew up evangelical, they still are evangelical, they align. But a lot of people, it's really hard to come to the truth, which is, I'm actually not really in alignment with what that looks like anymore. It's terrifying to have that be your truth. And I am in no way critical of people who have remained in that place where they know they no longer belong, but have remained, because it's really terrifying to step away from that. It hasn't been terrifying for me. It's been really liberating to say, God is not God is not a white man.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, I sound like God. I look like God. God looks like me and sounds like me, has been very liberating to kind of shed these rituals around how we pray. What is right? What is right? I just don't believe in hell anymore. I don't believe in a devil or a Satan anymore. I don't believe in end times and apocalyptic stuff. I mean, we, again, going back to the 90s, I just remember being terrified all the time that I was going to wake up, people were going to be gone in the rapture. And, and like, I can't even look at a glass of wine. I can't wear pants. I can't, there are all of these oppressive messages that I think this is my compassion, always trying to make sure it's present. I don't think that this was generated from a place of wanting to intentionally cause people harm. And I do think that people who still believe that way are being served in some way. It doesn't serve me to believe that there is a hell. I just don't believe it. I trust the voice in me that says that there is no hell. I trust that voice that says there is not.
So many good things about what you said. I love what you said about all the good things that you got from church too, that this isn't about throwing away everything from earlier in our lives, or that the people around us gave us all the wrong messages. Like that's
No.
not it at all. And in the book Grounded Wildness, I talk about, the 4 different ways that we perform. So like the proving, pleasing, and perfecting is trying to conform to the expectations, to the rules, to the standards. But rebelling is like what you said about throwing them all out the window, even the ones that align to you, just like pushing them away. And that's still performing too. Like neither of them are grounded and wild and authentic in you. And so I love that you can step back and recognize, what did I get from this? This is really beautiful. What did these experiences give me that I'm still holding with me, or who made me into the woman I am today? And here's what does not work for me. And I'm going to throw it out. Yeah.
And church is, I think that it's not fair to lump church as one body. I think that church is so different for everyone. And I think you can have church by yourself. Me personally, me and my, grounded wildness in the spiritual sense, I feel like one rule that I thought was a rule was that church was one thing, God was one entity, and religion, Christianity, was the religion, right? And now I don't, of course, align there at all. And I just think that the whole point of life is getting to know yourself. And I believe that God is on that journey with you, because you are on your journey with you. And so I think it's lazy to tell, like, I think it's kind of lazy living to subscribe to someone else's idea of what your life is and should be and how it should look. And I think it's also lazy to remain in a space where you are one or the other, right? Like I'm either Christian or I'm atheist. I think it's lazy to say, I don't like that, so forget it all. Like, it's more work, but it's just so delicious to say, gosh, I don't think that there is a single place that would have everything that checks my boxes across the board for anything. There's not a partner who checks all the boxes, certainly not kids. You know, the point of life is to kind of know that those are boxes in the first place.
Yes. Oh, yes. And then to know where you want to get out of the box. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So you talked a little bit about how like the church side of things, the religion side of things has been both good and a little terrifying at times, or that it can be terrifying. Maybe it wasn't for you, but it can be. What has this process of unraveling, whether you look at the body rules you were handed about and you preparing yourself to be for a boy and all of these different things and what it looks like to be fun and to be a lady and all of these things. What has that unraveling been like for you? Like, what's been hard and what has been just freeing and good? Like, what has that been like for you?
Oof, that's such a great question. I mean, I think for me, unraveling is, again, the point of life in the first place. It's like, you do have this short amount of time where you're a little person, and then you have all these years, God willing, source willing, divine willing, that you have on your own as a human that gets to do whatever. And so for me, unraveling has kind of happened by happenstance. I can't even lie and say, like, I always knew I'd be a publisher, or I always knew I'd be a mother, I always knew I'd be a wife or a business owner. I had no clue. I had no idea. If you asked 15 or 16-year-old Dara where she'd be at 43, it would look nothing like this. This is a life that I feel so privileged to be living, and I had no idea this is where I'd end up. So I think the unraveling number one has been very unintentional for the first half of my life. And I think that the now, midlife and on, I get to be more intentional. And I think deciding that my life was mine to live. I mean, younger people are making that decision way earlier, which makes me so excited, especially for young women and people of color, queer people deciding, like, this is who I am. I don't want that name. This is my name. I don't want that outfit. These are my outfits. I didn't have that courage till probably in the last 5 years to make some of those radical and unapologetic declarations that this is who I am.
I'm going to be so curious what happens the next 10, 20 or 30 years as that generation is getting older, of like, will a book like Grounded Wildness even be needed in 20 or 30 years?
Oh, absolutely. And the reason is not because, I mean, this is, I would say, the teeny bit of negative thought that permeates through my positivity. And that is, there are forces at work to continue to suppress and oppress people.
Yes.
And there are people who are stuck, and it's on purpose that they're stuck, right? Like, there are churches that are just super unsafe for women and super unsafe for kids and super unsafe for Black and brown people. I have family members in a community that I just, my heart hurts for them to be part of that community. And there are relationships and partners and people who are unhealed and just spewing lots of toxicity and harm everywhere. So there will always be people who are stuck and need to get unstuck. And I will always believe that storytelling is one of the most accessible ways for people to access healing, to get unstuck. So yeah, we will still need Grounded Wellness.
Yeah, it is. I love that you brought up storytelling. Like, I think of, we read a lot of people's individual stories, and those are beautiful. And sometimes we forget about the fiction stories too. Like, I read the book Detransition Baby, and it opened my eyes about gender probably more than any book, and particularly the transgender experience, but also just gender as a whole. It opened my eyes and challenged my thinking more than any nonfiction book ever has. And it was, we can like get into these stories and they can challenge us and open us up and think. And so I love that you brought up storytelling as a part of this unraveling.
I think fiction authors, like comedians, like fiction authors and comedians, are actually two of the kinds of humans that we unknowingly learn about humanity from, in the most powerful of ways. Like comedians have this uncanny ability through storytelling to have you see a hard truth that you wouldn't likely be able to hold without that laugh. And a novel, very same thing. You can see nuance in how people are complicated in ways that are hard and wrong and oppressive and good and great. And you get to see the nuance in a way and read it. Like, I think you can see it on a show, of course, movie, but when you read it, your mind has to process it and imagine it. And so something happens in you where you are confronted with your own humanity or someone else's, that a novel can do that for you. And like, what else can do that for you?
Yeah. I remember reading a quote by Maya Angelou that was like, I'm not going to get it totally right, but it was like, I desire to write in a way that it slips through people's brains and goes right to their heart. And I think that good stories, that's what it does. And not just goes to the heart, but opens the heart. And yeah, I love that. So
Yeah.
I want to shift here a little bit and ask, what do you do now in your life, practices or people or anything that connects you to your own rules for life, to your own grounded wildness? What do you do in your life to connect you back to you?
So I have been just immersed in this spiritual practice around connecting more with my ancestors for one. So, I worked with Dr. Joy, who's another fellow Wise Inc. author, but and she's just an incredible human. Her book is called Healing. And I took one of her classes in the middle of the pandemic, and it was called Calm and Chaos. It was an amazing course. And through that course, she opened up a discussion around connecting with our ancestors, having an altar in our homes for connecting to ancestors. So I had a little one and I was like, let's see, I don't know if it's going to go anywhere. And then something did open up for me when I started to have pictures of my grandmothers and Tommy's grandmothers. And then I started to add candles to it and have that be a part of a practice where I just burn a candle, not for any particular spiritual reason other than I really love candles, but I think having a candle burning throughout the day is just a really good way for me to ground. And then I added some crystals, and I liked that because I was like, well, these crystals are really pretty and they really hold energy for me around this or that. And so it developed. And so then now I feel like through connecting to my ancestors, I've started to read a lot of books about medicinal practices and herbs, and that's been amazing. And so it's just, so now I would say so many of my practices now are really about centering and grounding myself in who I am through where I've come from. I have these amazing women and men who are my ancestors, who did incredible things, who experienced incredible things. Not all of them I will ever know about, but feeling that presence around me on a day-to-day basis has been really shifting for me. And then the herbalism piece has been great because I feel like so much of what the rules say is healing looks this way. You go to a doctor. I mentioned chronic pain. I've got chronic back pain because I have scoliosis. I have a curvy back, and I just have a lot of pain. And there isn't really a way for me to work with traditional practitioners to heal it because it's a structural thing. So maintaining and, having some way to combat the pain, it's been freeing for me to feel like I've got tools at my fingertips that I can use that don't involve traditional medicine.
Love that. Yeah. And how does writing, you talked about being, you're encouraging other storytellers. What about your own stories and your own writing?
So, I mean, I think you and I have this parallel, Heather, where, we kind of followed the rules around getting good grades and
Yes.
getting a career that is meaningful, that people can be proud of. And I did all that stuff, got a graduate degree, and worked at large organizations. And so I spent my 20s and 30s like in those rules around career building and success and, you know, leadership. I went to a women's college where leadership was like one of the big principles that were ingrained in us. You know, you are the future leader of tomorrow. So in my 20s and 30s, it was all about career. And so even though I had this love of writing, started a literary journal in college for women of color. Storytelling has always been there. I didn't feel like I had space for my own writing. I would scribble poems in the middle of the night. If there was a boy, he maybe had a poem or two written about him.
I'm
Tommy,
laughing because the number of poems that I've written about like agonizing over boys. I mean, it's
yeah.
almost embarrassing, but I think we all have some version of that in our lives.
Oh gosh. And like when I date you, and so Heather, you know, my husband, I mean, we met in our early 20s, met him when I was 22. Gosh, I'd make him read these poems I wrote about him and he would be so nice. Like, this is really nice, you know? um, that was the extent of the writing I allowed myself to do, knowing that I love short story writing, that I would, you know, dream about these novels that I'd want to write and would never really do it because I was thinking that the right thing for me to do was focusing on the career and making the money and becoming successful and independent. And so now I've done all that. And I don't want to devote the next 20 years of my life to just building and expanding and making more money. I really want to be grounded in my love of words. And I have some stuff I want to say. I have some messages that I want to share. And I think that owning that, and you know what it's like, right? To say I'm an author, I'm a writer. It's not something I myself say in confidence, quite frankly. And some of this unraveling, unlearning, deconstructing, I'm writing a play and I'm excited about it.
Yeah. It's so interesting too, because I mean, in your bio, I literally read off 4 different books that you've already written, and yet that it's still hard to say confidently, like, I am an author.
Well, and here's the thing, you know, 3 of the books you named that I wrote were books I'm super proud of, but they were books that served my career.
Yes.
So that felt easier to do, you know, no less important, but it was easier for me to write a book about publishing. It was easier for me to write a book in service to people that I love working with. It was harder to write a 32-page picture book for Black girls. And I mean, why? Because it was vulnerable. It was a risk. It felt more, I don't know. It felt like I was holding a mirror up to myself and saying, here's who you get to be while you read this book. You get to be Queen Amina. And that felt different.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting? I mean, I don't really have the experience of because when I started writing, the 2 books that I've written were that they were like books that came from my soul, and in particular, Grounded Wildness. Both of them were at the time. I mean, the first Overachiever's Guide to Breaking the Rules was exactly where I was at the time. And it is terrifying. It's completely vulnerable and terrifying. And yeah, I still have to remind myself, like, no, these are the reasons I wrote this book. These are the reasons I wrote this book. And I'm reminded, as you know, only a few people have read Grounded Wildness so far. And they have, yeah, they have reaffirmed the reasons that I wrote it, which feels really good. And it's still scary. Like, there are nights when I wake up, like, not uncommonly nights I wake up in the middle of the night and I'm like, oh my God, everyone's going to read this, and it feels really real. And that feels important too. Which I think is part of the weight. It's like a good weight. It's a good weight to be carrying, but it's also exposing, especially when we've gotten a lot of these rules that are telling us don't do that, or don't share that shame, or don't share that thing, or don't write a children's book when you're running a publishing company, or whatever, whatever it is. Like, we've gotten a lot of those messages. And so even like I would say that publishing Grounded Wildness is my greatest act of grounded wildness, not writing it, but publishing it and sharing it with people. Cause those are 2 really different things. So, yeah, it's fascinating.
Well, and I know this is your podcast and I don't want to put you on the spot, but I remember when we were just, talking about grounded wellness and you were sharing about it. And I remember feeling this excitement that I feel rarely actually with authors, because there's books I love, there's books that I'm excited about that I know isn't written for me, but I'm still excited. For this book, it was different because I was like, this is a book that I am excited to know that someone else is on a similar journey as me.
Yes.
And we had that conversation, and I'm curious for you about the bravery, courage process for deciding that I'm going to put this journey in writing.
At the beginning, it didn't feel brave or courageous. Like when I started writing, it just felt like this is what needs to come out of me. It did not, the bravery, it didn't feel brave or courageous. It felt like a deep dive. It felt like there was emotions there. There was a lot there, but the writing of it just felt like this is what needs to happen. I think the bravery and courageous part came with sharing it. So when I shared it, I wasn't particularly worried about sharing it with you, but even when I shared it with my 4 beta readers. So those of you who are not in the publishing world, you generally share it with a few people first who then give you feedback. So when I shared it with them and I was like, oh my gosh, these are the first kind of quote unquote audience readers that are going to be reading this book. That was one level of bravery and courage. And then the next one was when I sent it out to people for endorsements, including a number of corporate leaders that I'd worked with. And I was like, this is not a corporate book. What are they it does bring up, there are corporate examples in it. There are plenty of work examples in it, but it is not a corporate book. And I knew something had clicked into place when I got an email back from someone because I had told this group, I was like, here's the book, here's a PDF of the book, but feel free to skim it. I'm not expecting you to read every single word of this book. And someone emailed me back and said, I need another 2 days, Heather, because you said I could skim this book and I can't, it's too powerful. And that I knew when I got that email back, it's bringing up emotion in me now. Cause I knew that this had hit on something, that it wasn't just my own journey, that it was your journey and that woman's journey and so many other people's journeys. And that's what brings me through on the bravery and courageous part. And also the fact that I believe that when we not only need to break the rules for our own lives, for our own freedom, for our own joy, for our own authenticity, but that when we break the rules individually, it inevitably breaks bigger rules. And in small ways and in big ways. And that is part of, it's what's bigger than the fear.
What's bigger than the fear?
Doesn't mean the fear isn't there. It is, but there's a lot that's bigger than that fear. So yeah. We've gone way over on time already, but I have two more questions. This does not surprise me at all. I told people Dara at the beginning, I was like, want to keep this to about 30 minutes. I already know we're way over that. But you had talked about all these new practices, these things that are coming into your life now around writing and having an altar and herbalism and all of these different things. You are a busy person. You still do own a business. You are a mom of 2 small children. You have community, friends, your wife, all of these different things. How do you create the space for these things that are so important to you?
Well, here's I think, secret to grounded wellness. I didn't write the book, but I think the secret is to decide, right, that I am the center of my own universe. And I could give every second to everything else outside of me. The world would not care. People would not feel any guilt or embarrassment for asking me to give all of my moments to them. My kids, husband. I have decided to break some rules around how much of me I give. And it was time. It was time, especially with these little people who, I'm not one of those moms who felt like from the moment I held my first doll baby, I'd be a mother. I did not know I'd be a mom. It was okay if I was a mom, okay if I didn't. I was very, agnostic about it. And now that I am, what I can tell you is that kids really do demand way more of us than we think they will. And you can still, as a parent, decide that they get me from this time to this time, most days. And another parent told that to me, and it was a father. There's a whole lot we could say about that,
Yes.
right? Father said, I decide at 9 o'clock that no matter where the kids are, I'm done parenting for the day. And that felt queasy. Like, you don't get to just turn your kids off. You don't get to just say, dad, that you're, but I was really happy he shared that with me, because it made me have a boundary for myself that my time starts at 9. And I don't begin my work as a parent and as a boss and as a wife until this time. And so carving out this time for me, that's just my time to do whatever I want, and also building out throughout the day. So I don't give a consecutive 8 hours to my company. I give 40 hours over the week, and I spread that out as I may and wish and need to. And I build into my days self-care. I build into my days time in nature, time to read, relax, breathe, because the world doesn't care if I'm burnt out. And my phone, can we talk about phones? Like, phones
Sure.
are so draining of energy. And I'm also addicted to my phone,
Yeah.
and like literally check my email compulsively, you know, on my Slack channels for work compulsively. So I've done a little bit of work, still have a lot more work to do there with detaching from my devices, because that's time to give back to me.
Yeah. I love that. Just what you said around, like, I'm breaking the rules because the world will take and take and take, and the world could be kids or a spouse or work or your phone or everything, and you get to decide. You get to decide how much the world gets of you, or how much everything outside of you gets of you.
Absolutely. And, just something really logistical, because I am always a Virgo, moon, sun, and rising, to your listeners. And they'll tell you she's unhinged. Triple Virgo. What? The logistical piece is I schedule the things that I need week to week that are for me. And I have a separate to-do list, because, we live, for some of us that are type A, it's calendar and to-do list. And so when I knew and realized that about me, that so much of my life lives on the calendar and lives in this to-do list, then I need to then have my therapy scheduled every other week as a meeting. And my body worker, Andrew, is on my calendar every other week as a meeting. My work break and walk and lunch and vitamins and sun are on my to-do list.
Yeah. I love that. When you were saying that, I just had this word of like the me list. Like, there's the to-do list, and then there's the me list, and you get to have a me list.
Yeah. Herbal shopping is on that list. Go herbal.
Yeah.
And then it gives me permission, and then it's front of mind. Oh, I get to go herbal shopping this week. I get to, I get to go plant shopping. I get to, new book starts this week.
Yeah. I love it. I have two final questions for you. One is just simply to open it up and say, is there anything you want to share or talk about that we haven't yet talked about?
Well, I guess what I would like to just say is thank you for writing this book. It's always a joy as a publisher to have a spiritual journey happening at the same time that a book is writing to that journey you're on. That those are just words I'm stringing together, but I hope you understand the magnitude of what that feels like. For me, like sitting in my seat to be on this spiritual journey and have an author writing a book specifically to that. There is no greater gift in the work that I do than that. So thank you for that, truly, from the bottom of my heart, and this amazing opportunity to talk about it. Like,
Yes, I know this is, I am thrilled. Thank you. Thank you for all of that. And now one final question. What does grounded wildness mean to you?
abundance is what the word that just came loud. Thank you, ancestors. It's abundance, because I think that I have a lot to say about the world, but the last parting thought is the world is very okay with you thinking small and feeling small and imagining yourself as small. But when we really think about the world is so big, and your abilities, your possibilities, your dreams, what you can create, what you're meant to experience is just so abundant. And rules exist, I think, to protect people who are afraid of what abundance can really be and mean. And the whole point is abundance.
Perfect way to end. Thank you. Thank you, Dara, for being here. Thank you for being so open and sharing your journey. And we covered so many different aspects of life today, which I absolutely love. And yes, Grounded Wildness is coming out October 17th, 6 days after this is being published. So you can go to my website, which is heatherwhelpley.com/grounded wildness. That's where you're going to get signed hardcover copies. And then a few weeks later on November 2nd, it'll be on Amazon. The hardcover, ebook, audiobook, and accompanying journal will all be on Amazon on November 2nd. So lots of fun, exciting things happening here. And yeah, I mean, if you resonated, I loved getting to hear today, Dara, your side or your journey of grounded wildness that is similar to mine in many ways and different in other ways. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about this is as people read the book, they're going to personalize it to them and to their own journey. And it'll mean something a little different to everyone who reads it. So thank you for starting by sharing your journey here today. And thank you for everyone listening. And we'll tune in 2 weeks from today with the next episode of Grounded Wildness. Thanks, everyone.